What's up, everybody, and welcome into the H&M Trucking Podcast, episode 50. You heard that right, 50. Now, listen, I'm not going to sit here and pat myself on the back all day because we got to 50 episodes. But I am going to pat myself on the back for a little bit right here off the top because we got to 50 episodes. Every damn week since we started doing the H&M Trucking Podcast, we have put an episode out for you to listen to. You guys have eaten them up. You've been listening. You've been contributing. And I thank you all so much for that. We're going to give some of the office staff an opportunity today to come in and tell us what they think about our first chunk of 50 episodes and what they're looking forward to in the future. And I am very excited about that. I do have, I believe, some new drivers to welcome real quick. So let me get my applause button back out and ready because they deserve it just as much as we do for getting to 50. Welcome, Terrell McGowan. He's a van OTR driver. And also a big H&M Trucking welcome to Donald Allen. He's driving in a van OTR. We're going to have some fun on today's podcast. Maybe there's not as much substance as usual, but that's okay. We've spent 49 episodes in the substance. We're going to go ahead and have a little bit of fun, celebrate our big milestone today, and talk to some people that you haven't heard from in quite a while, including James Fonda himself. I play the party horns because you guys might not know this about James Fonda, but he used to throw some very epic parties in his younger days. And not the kind of party that's like, hey, my parents are gone, come hang out at the house. This guy threw professional parties. He would be hired by these venue owners to throw these massive parties. And you know they had a lot of party horns at them. Hell, they might have even had like a bald eagle or two. All right, that might sound a little far-fetched, but I'm telling you, James Fonda was known for the party. And today, we're welcoming him to our party to talk a little bit about the 50 episodes that we have under our belt here on the H&M Trucking Podcast. I greatly appreciate all you that are out there listening. Thanks for being here. Let's get to it.
From Omaha, Nebraska, to whatever lane you're driving, this is the H&M Trucking Podcast with your host, Marcus Bridges.
You know, we were putting together our 50th anniversary episode, and believe it or not, 50 episodes of the H&M Trucking Podcast when this one goes live. And we thought, who better to have than our absolute favorite guest who has been with us since the very beginning, Eve Essary. Eve, thank you for joining Denny and I today. It's great to have you back on the podcast.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
I was telling Denny that you actually were responsible for our very first ever F-bomb on this podcast. And I know that you're not always fond when I bring that up, but you also know that I'm really excited about it still to this day.
You do like to bring that up. It is one of your favorite topics of conversation.
Well, I told you back when it happened that you opened the floodgates. It's just, I don't know if you believed me.
Well, it's trucking. I mean, what are you going to do? Sometimes there's no word that is appropriate except for the F word.
Absolutely. You got to speak the language, right, Denny?
That's right. I cussed worse as a trucker than I ever did as a Marine, believe it or not.
That's interesting. I would have thought that to be the other way around, but no, it's a little bit more frustrating being a trucker than a Marine. Is that what I hear?
I don't know if I go that far.
Well,
you know, a drill sergeant behind you yelling at you anyway, at least in the truck, unless you take your wife with you.
Oh, I didn't think about that. Or Gilly. I mean, I'm sure Gilly had a few things to say over the over those years, right, Denny?
Gilly was fine, but my wife was like, no, when you get one that has a kitchen, a bedroom, and a bathroom with a shower, maybe I'll come on the road with you. Until then,
Right?
No,
I'm with her.
saying here's a bucket, it just wasn't going to do.
I've gone with my husband a couple of times when he was driving when we were younger, and I would make him stop to go to the restroom, and he's like, "We don't stop for that." I was like, "We do now."
When I told her I'd get in the truck and drive for 5 hours without stopping, she's like, "Nope, not gonna happen. I'll see you when you get home."
Yeah.
I don't have the obviously the long haul experience, but to get back to where I grew up from where I live now is about 7.5 hours. And the first time that my wife ever made that trip with me, she finally looked at me after a few hours and she goes, "When are we going to stop?" And I said, "This is a one-stop trip, sweetheart. We stop at just after 4 hours and we put the other 3.5 on the back." And she said, didn't even let me finish the sentence, was like, "No, we stop at the next rest stop." But over these last 10 years that we've been married, and even before that, she has adapted to me so well. She only buys super salty snacks, and she will drink next to nothing when we're on the road together. And she's trained herself, but I can see that if she was behind the wheel, that wouldn't always be the case. But I mean, I guess that's how you find your soulmate, right? Who will eat the saltiest of the salty just to stay in the cab and get some road behind us? And I found her.
What a lucky guy you are, Marcus.
Yeah. Notice she didn't say she's a lucky gal. All right. Well, we've got a few line items to get to here real quick, Eve. As always, I want to start out with any special announcements, anniversaries, anything like that you've got for me. Take it away.
Yeah, I have a couple. So Otis Valray, he is one of our drivers. He is celebrating 5 years with H&M on March 18th. So I want to give a shout out to him. He is an owner operator and out there, doing his thing, and he's gets good miles. And so we really appreciate everything that he does. And then the second one is someone that you may know, Marcus, Sherry Vogler, our recruiter here at H&M. She will be with us 5 years on March 25th. So I really appreciate her and everything she does for the podcast and helping out. She kind of does some behind the scenes stuff for us. And so happy anniversary to both of them.
Absolutely. Happy anniversary to both of them. Otis, great job out there. If you're listening, stay safe. Keep the shiny side up for 5 more good years, and we'll shout you out again because I'm still planning on being here. You're not getting rid of me that easy, Eve. I also want to say thanks to Sherry. If all things go well, she will be on this episode as well. But Sherry's been a fantastic resource here for us on the podcast. She's the one that sends me the new drivers to welcome every week. And I love that we've added that to the podcast because we've actually gotten a couple drivers to show some interest and come on the podcast just because, Sherry's plugging it to them. So, It's been great to have the support that we get from you guys there at the front office. I know you're all busy. It's a big company, and podcast probably sits down the list of priorities a bit, but you wouldn't know it when I get to work with Sherry and you, Eve, as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So any other announcements before we move on?
I don't have anything else. It's kind of the beginning of the year tends to be a little quieter for us. Not as many hires and things like that kind of happen. So these few months at the beginning are quiet.
Perfect. Well, that gives you a little bit of time to enjoy some of the things that go on in your life. I know that you recently had a state qualified wrestler that was wrestling in the Nebraska State Championships, or is it Iowa for you? I forget. Nebraska. I told you in the email when we talked back and forth, I was a very mediocre, and that might be overselling it, wrestler in high school. But still, some of my most fond memories were tagging along with the good wrestlers when they went to the state tournament. It's actually where I skipped town and got my first 2 tattoos during a state wrestling tournament. Coaches weren't so excited about that, but I wasn't wrestling anymore, so didn't matter. But talk to me about state wrestling. Who was there? How did it go?
Oh, it was a really awesome experience. So we had never been before. This was a new experience. So you guys all know that I have a huge family. I have 8 kids, so 4 boys and 4 girls. And so this is our youngest son, and he qualified for state at the 106 weight class. So the smallest weight class that you can have in boys wrestling. And he weighs all of 100 pounds soaking wet.
So he doesn't have to cut weight like the rest of us did then. That's great.
Oh, no. He's not cutting weight. He is like, my other son is a senior. He didn't make state qualifying. He still did very well, had a great season. But my senior was cutting weight, and he would be at the dinner table eating, chicken and vegetables. And my other son is there like, where's the spaghetti? I need more carbs. Like, what else can I eat? So it was a great time for the little brother to get some revenge on the big brother, during cutting weight for sure. But it was awesome. We got to see all the other schools competing. They actually added a whole division for girls wrestling this year in Nebraska. So that was really cool to watch those girls at the state tournament too, and how tough they are. And they were kicking butt and taking names. So that was really fun. My son didn't do so great in the tournament. Like, he didn't get very far. He lost the first two matches, and was out, but it was still kind of fun to be there and be in that environment. He's just a sophomore, so we still have a couple of years to get back and try it again. So
that's very cool. I'm glad to hear it. It's a great experience, and he's only going to get better next year and the following year, and getting to be a state qualified wrestler as a sophomore is no easy feat. So big ups to him for that. And you misspoke earlier, Eve. You have 9 kids, because remember, I joined your family way back at episode 1. We talked about that. I just haven't photoshopped myself into any of the pictures yet, but I'm working on it.
That's true. That's true.
They didn't have a women's wrestling division when I was in high school, and there was a female in my weight class for 2 straight years, and I wrestled her many times, and I had to hand it to her because she took her lumps, and she also won some matches. I know that this is going to date me a little bit because of how this would be seen in this day and age, but the very first time I wrestled her as a freshman in my very first high school wrestling meet, one of my assistant coaches, who was just a wrestler that had recently graduated, he didn't go off to college, he just stuck around, helped coach, do all that stuff. He put his arm around me, said, "How you feeling?" And I said, "I'm good. I'm loose. Feel like I'm ready to go out there and win." And he goes, "Good. Because if you don't, you're walking home." And that was the last thing I heard before they blew the whistle. So it's very cool to see that they've opened up women's divisions. And I also read an article just the other day that a female actually won the men's state title in, I believe, Arizona. She wrestled with all the guys because they didn't have a division, and she took home the gold. So yeah, it's a really cool story, and just glad to hear that women's wrestling is a thing, because we had 3 girls that came out for our team while I was in high school, and none of them ended up staying with it. It's got to be really tough on them. When you're talking about high school aged boys, they're not going to take it easy on you in practice like that. And it was very courageous, but I'm glad that they've got their own weight classes and divisions now, because they deserve it for sure.
Me too. It was really good to see. And it was really nice to see even how the boys, how supportive they were of those girls that were wrestling. They were really respectful, and they were really supportive of them. So I was really happy to see that too.
Denny, were you a wrestler at all in high school?
Not officially. That wasn't a thing in Texas. Football's king here. Of course, I played football in junior high, and then freshman year, about, 2 weeks into the season, coach called a bunch of us in. He said, "Boys, it's either band or football. You got to pick one or the other." I'm like, "Well, I like football, but I'm like at best third string. I'm sitting first chair trombone in band and taking jazz lessons and concert trombone lessons from the first trombonist to the Houston Symphony. And I'd just taken out my first bank loan to buy a new horn." So it was a pretty easy call for me. I spent my high school years in the band.
That's good. Hey, a good pep band is not to be reckoned with in the high school sphere. I mean, some of the most intimidating gyms you go to in high school are intimidating because they've got that band in there leading the charge.
Sure. I was also the band kid, Denny. I didn't play one sport my entire life. I always tell people I don't sports, I spreadsheet. I am the most unathletic person, and yet I have all of these kids that do every single sport, and they did not get it from me. So
well, it's been cool.
I bloomed late in life. Many years after the Marine Corps, I actually I broke my back in the mid 80s, and I started jogging, believe it or not, because it helped the back pain. And it just kept going and kept going and kept going. And I went through a divorce, and I would go out and work my frustrations.
Or is this your life, Denny?
It actually turned into like Forrest Gump, because I started running marathons.
Really?
And I ran marathons. I ran 2 or 3 marathons a year for a long time until my back and my knee just wouldn't take it anymore. I miss it. I really do.
Sure.
But I hated running. Even the Marine Corps, they had to make me run. I hated it. And then years later, something I loved. I had a watch at the time that would show me the low tides, because I'd lived on the beach in Florida. And so I'd go out at low tide and I'd run my distance. I never ran during those years. I never ran less than 5 miles a day. It was either 5 or 7 miles, and then distance on weekends.
Somebody better be chasing me.
Yeah, I just got tired hearing you talk about that, Denny. So I can't imagine what it would be like if you had to drag me along for that 5-mile run. I've never been a runner either. I always blame it on my short legs and my long torso, but I think I'm just lazy, to be honest with you. So
I wish I could do it today. I really do. I truly miss it. For many years, my logic was, if I didn't have enough time to run 5 miles, why even bother going out? So, but anyway, that's a whole different story.
I have to ask, marathon's 29.2 miles, right?
26.2.
26.2. Same. I mean, those last 3 miles, I'd be dead before we ever got to 5. So, but what was the hardest mile for you in those marathons, Denny? I'm always curious, because at the end, everybody seems happy, but I know there's got to be a struggle in there somewhere.
Well, actually, even saying runner is a misnomer for me, because I was slow. I ran a consistent 12-minute mile, but I could run 26.2 of them, and it really didn't falter. My first marathon was the Marine Corps Marathon in Washington, D.C., and the hardest part of that one was the last quarter of a mile or so is up a pretty good hill to the monument, to the Marine Corps monument, the Iwo Jima monument. And that cranking out that last quarter mile or so up that hill, if it hadn't been the last quarter mile, if it had been, 24 point, I don't know if I'd have made the whole thing. That last quarter mile was tough, but that was fun, because it went by all the memorials, all the monuments. I even took a disposable camera that day in my little fanny pack I carried with me. And, we'd stop and take pictures along the way, because there was no danger of me winning or anything. So what's a few seconds here and there?
That's awesome. Well, I love hearing about stuff like this, and I can't wait as the podcast unfolds. I've said this many times, to hear more about you, Denny, because, out of all the things that you've told me you did, you hadn't mentioned marathon runner yet. So I'm curious to find out more, man. I really am.
Well, living in the Florida Panhandle, the Blue Angel Marathon was every year. I made that one every year because it was close enough. And the cool thing is, instead of a starting pistol for that one, the starting pistol was the Blue Angels with a low flyover.
Oh, wow.
That was kind of memorable.
I bet.
Anyway, move on. You have other things to cover.
Well, we'll come back to Denny, the marathon runner, at some time in the future. I can almost guarantee it. But he's right. We should move on to our weekly safety campaign. Eve, you've put together this awesome safety campaign. I've seen the Facebook posts out there. Each week, you've got a different focal point. And I wanted to touch on that before we get into laying down the law. What are we looking at for this week in our H&M safety campaign?
I knew you were going to ask me that, and I don't have it pulled up. Hold, please.
Absolutely.
All right. While you're pulling, I'll run down the calendar real quick. Let's see. Coming up this next weekend, got a couple of things. Rolling Loud in Inglewood, California, from the 15th to the 17th. I'm guessing that's a motorcycle thing. And NASCAR's in Bristol on the 17th. So watch out for that traffic.
One of my most favorite NASCAR races to watch on the TV is Bristol.
I think everybody thinks that. That's in Brickyard.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So be careful out there, drivers. Obviously going to be a lot of traffic around Rolling Loud and Bristol. And as I'm looking at Eve here, I'm wondering if we gave her enough time.
I got it.
Awesome.
But also, I always call NASCAR my NASCAR nap time. There's just something soothing about the vroom around the track. I turn it on and it's lights out, and wake me up when there's a crash. That's how I do NASCAR.
I can tell you from experience, I've seen some people sleep in the stands at an actual NASCAR race, and I've always been dumbfounded because even with the headphones on that you can rent that have the broadcast piped into them, you still cannot hear yourself think at a NASCAR race. And I've just seen peaceful slumber, Eve. So I think that you're probably in good company with NASCAR nap time.
NASCAR nap time. It's great. So safety campaign. So, we talked about our New Year's resolutions, Marcus, last time that I was on here. And so safety campaign was kind of one of those things I was getting kicked off and all of that. How's the words of affirmation to the corgis? How's that going?
They're really good. Detective Elliot Stabler, I think, is showing more confidence in running this precinct than what I ever thought possible. Lieutenant Dan, on the other hand, he is a wild card. You just don't know. Today's a Tuesday, so we've attacked our brother. We've peed in a place that we are not supposed to pee, and we've also destroyed a plushie toy. So, tomorrow.
Overconfidence.
Yeah, I think so. And I think just a little bit of little man syndrome, to be honest. He's about 5 pounds lighter than the other one, and sometimes I just think he doesn't feel seen. So I just need to give them both more attention always. That's always my answer when it comes to the corgis, Eve.
Okay, good. Well, we're working on the safety campaign, still going strong there. So the drivers have probably seen some of those messages come out through January and February. We've had a lot of fun with it. So March, we're really focusing on fatigue driving. So all the safety messages are about fatigue driving. So week 2 of March, daylight savings time. Why do we do this again? That's where we're going to be at. Why do we do this? Why do we do it to ourselves? It's just ridiculous. But here we are every spring, every fall, messing with our schedules. But it does mess with our schedules enough that, sometimes that can cause extra fatigue. So just be aware of that. And then week 3, if you're asleep at the wheel, who's driving? It's a great question.
Good question.
We need to know, and hopefully you're not sleeping at the wheel. And then week 4 is 7 to 8 hours of sleep is the only way to keep trucking. So making sure everybody's getting that rest time. It's really important. I think it's one of those those things people don't talk about as much when we're talking about, productivity and trucking and all of those things. You have that 10-hour break, and getting those 8 hours of sleep in those 10 hours is really important. I know everybody's got other things to do too, but priority needs to be getting your rest.
Absolutely. I can agree wholeheartedly. Fatigue driving is one of the scariest things. And when I was younger, in my early 20s, and I was on a long road trip, I would think, a couple energy drinks, maybe a 5-hour energy shot, and I can make this happen. Now I have the luxury. I'm not required to be any place at any given time. I'll take a nap on the side of the road, almost anywhere that I can park safely. Denny, I'm sure you've got experience with this type of stuff. How big of a role did fatigued driving play in your driving career?
Worst case was years ago, way before I went to work for H&M. I did a coast to coast turnaround every 2 weeks. I'd pull produce, usually potatoes or tomatoes, out of Florida, go up to Atlanta, picked up cookie dough to go to Ontario, California. Still shaking my head trying to figure that one out. Then from there, I go up to Salinas and reload. I do a reset in Salinas, California, and reload with produce, sometimes stop in Yuma on the way back. But that always had to be in Arcadia, Florida, first thing Monday morning. Then I'd do another reset in Florida and repeat.
Wow.
Well, the biggest problem was the produce out of Salinas supposed to be delayed. I'd have to get up at 8 a.m. to check in. And they were supposed to load me by noon, but then it became afternoon, and then later on after 6. And then towards the end, it was not unusual to be after midnight. Now, mind you, I've been up since 8 a.m. or before 8 a.m., checking in every so often, like you're supposed to. So I finally get to leave, at 1 o'clock in the morning. Well, there's no rescheduling the delivery date. It has to be in Arcadia, Florida by 6 a.m. Monday morning. And their response would have been, well, we'll just find somebody that runs teams. And I was with a very small company. They didn't have any weight, any clout. And I'm ripping up paper logs like you wouldn't believe. I I was very creative in those days. And actually it came to a head when one day my wife told me she was losing sleep because she was worried I was going to crash off a mountain. So that's when I decided this has got to stop. But enough's enough, because, I'd be up all day. I'd drive from there to Kingman, Arizona, get a shower and 2 or 3 hours sleep. I'd drive from there to right at the Texas-New Mexico border. Same thing. Shower, a couple hours sleep. Then I'd drive from there to, that was the way it went, because I had to be in Florida Monday morning. So.
And when you were running those paper logs, you could do it because you could change things and, tear up.
Oh yeah, I was creative. I even knew you don't hang on to receipts, because they would look in your trash to see if they had any receipts that didn't match what your log said. So yeah, I learned all those tricks, but that's why when electronic logs came along, unlike most drivers, I was fine with it, because I found the paper logs weren't benefiting me. They were benefiting the shippers, the receivers, and the company. I was just losing sleep. I was still making the same amount of money. So I was fine with ELD. It was okay with me.
Well, and the amount of stress that can come along with just the fact that you're not getting enough sleep, and then you're also having to worry about doctoring these logs so that you can continue to do what you do. That stress just seems overbearing to me. Just listening to you talk about it, I'm sweating, much like when you were talking about running marathons.
Yeah, marathons were easier.
All right, Eve, it's been a while. I can't wait for it. Every time you come on, we have a very special segment that we like to call Laying Down the Law with Eve. So in this segment, for those of you that might not have heard it before, since it has been a little while, I'll reset it for you. Eve is going to take us through a situation where maybe something didn't go exactly as it was supposed to. This is meant to be a little bit of a lesson, not as much of a scolding. Eve saves her scolding for me on this podcast, but listen to the lesson that she's about to deliver you here.
Okay, here's the bone I have to pick this week. So Connie and we spend a lot of time talking to people about benefits, right? Mm-hmm. And we talked about benefits as the new year is rolling around and open enrollment. And then we have guys and drivers and girls and all of these that say, I don't need that. I don't need health insurance. I'm fine. That's expensive, whatever their reason is. And then something happens. And then they call and then they're crying because they don't have health insurance and they have a medical issue that they needed to take care of and they don't have the insurance to cover it. Folks, we're not doing this for our benefit. We're doing it for yours. We really want you to be able to take care of yourself. We want you to sign up for benefits. We want you to be able to have health care and vision and dental and all of those things so that you can take care of yourselves. And man, we can lead a horse to water, but we can't make it drink. That's where we're at. And that's exactly what actually happened today, is that we had an issue where someone called and they did not take the health insurance and now they have a health issue and they're going to have to be off work. They're missing wages. They didn't sign up for short-term disability. They don't have health insurance. None of these things put in place that we give you to help you. Help us help you. That's what I'm saying today.
We don't do podcast episodes about just anything. We plan them out and make sure that they're beneficial. And we did an entire podcast episode with you and Connie about open enrollment. I would urge you to go back and listen to it, although I think that it's probably aged itself out at this point due to the story that we just heard. You're too little, too late. You got to jump on that stuff when those periods are open.
Hopefully we have some new drivers that are listening to this, though. So that's kind of why I wanted to plug it a little bit today, is because we have every month we have new drivers that are newly eligible for these benefits. It's 60 days and then first of the month, and then they're eligible again. So just making sure we're sending emails, we're making phone calls, we're trying to get the message out there. But if you turn it down, you're done for the year, and we can't add you again until January of 2025. And that's a long way off, and a lot of shit can happen before January of 2025.
Amen to that.
If COVID taught us anything, it's that a lot of stuff can happen before January of the next year.
No joke. We can change the whole world before January next year. Just watch us do it. It'll be crazy, but it'll be
my beard.
Yeah, right. Well, Eve, thank you so much. Denny, thank you as well. It's always a pleasure to have you on here, Eve. We will definitely get you back on here within a month or so and let you lay down the law again, because I feel like these are great lessons. And it seems like every time they kind of apply to more than just one driver. They apply to a lot of you out there listening. So you gotta listen to Eve. She's got some real sage advice. Been doing this for a while.
For a minute.
All right. Take care of yourself, Eve. Thanks again. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Jumping on the pod here with us next to help us celebrate our 50th episode on the H&M Trucking Podcast. She has been a fantastic resource for us since she started working with the podcast here, and just can't thank her enough for all of her help, and responsible for all of the new drivers getting welcomed. Please welcome to this show, Sherry Vogler. And I even pronounced it right that time. Sherry, aren't you proud of me?
I am. I'm super proud of you.
Between pronouncing your name wrong and calling you Shelly the first week that we worked together, I've had a few stumbles here, but I appreciate you keeping up with me and putting up with me more so.
It's all right. It happens. I just, usually just answer and I'm fine with it.
Well, I'm glad that you called me on it, because when that email came back and you said, wait, was this for me or was this for Shelly? And I thought, I had told myself 17 times I need to keep these names straight. And then after I told myself the 17th time, I just went ahead and screwed it up anyway. So par for the course, Sherry, it really is.
Everybody does it. It's funny, like how many drivers call in and like they call me wanting Shelly or they call Shelly wanting me. So it happens around here quite often.
Okay. Well, at least I'm in good company. I'm really, really glad to have you here. And just, we're trying to hype up the podcast a little bit here on our 50th episode. We've brought Denny here on. He's a retired H&M driver, as everybody out there listening knows. He's added tremendous value to the podcast, and I've learned a lot from Denny just in conversation already. Did you guys get to work together at all, or spend any time together at H&M?
Yeah, I saw Denny several times. I've been here, it'll be 5 years in March. So I was really excited to hear that he was helping out on the podcast. That was just really exciting, just to hear that he was going to be there. And you were one of my favorites. I loved it when you came in the office. It was always so awesome. You always had great things to say.
Yeah, most people didn't want to see me unless I brought Gilly.
Well, I think Gilly helped a little bit.
It never hurts to come in with a pooch, right?
No, it never hurts a thing. He did come in a couple times and everybody's like, where's Gilly?
Yep, that's the way it was.
So, Sherry, have you had a good time working with us on the podcast? I know we haven't gotten a chance to get you on the air much. We've been talking to a lot of drivers lately, but has it been enjoyable, at least for you thus far?
Yeah, I love being involved in it. I think that it's a great tool. It's a great thing. Things I tell the drivers when they come in, I'm just like, hey, give it a listen. Like, it's not a podcast that's, per se, H&M is super wonderful. Come to H&M. You guys tackle a lot of things that are super important to our drivers and day-to-day issues that they face. And I really like that.
Well, that's one thing that bringing Denny in has helped with so much, because I don't have to call and bug a driver every single time that I'm wondering about how a driver might feel. And Denny, you've been so wide open with your experiences and everything. It's just one of the reasons that I wanted to do this episode and just kind of celebrate the fact that we're 50 episodes in, is because we have talked about a lot of stuff. Not all of it's been sunshine and rainbows, that's for sure. But I feel like it's kind of water cooler talk for a little bit. There's some things that get discussed every now and then that might not be everybody's bag of donuts, but that's kind of what the fun part about it is. And maybe it's only fun for me because I'm sort of independent of it. Whatever gets changed or moved around might not affect me other than having to talk about it a little bit.
I remember the very first time you had me on and you asked me something and I said, do you really want my honest opinion? Are you sure you want to hear this?
I do. And, having you guys be honest, that's one thing that I really think is awesome about the way that H&M recruits drivers is everybody I've talked to seems to be a wide open book with me. And they'll say, listen, I love working for this company, but there's a few things that, maybe I would either like changed or maybe I would just like them explained to me better. How does your recruitment process, Sherry, kind of look for those types of drivers? How do you get guys in that you can communicate with, that will help move the company forward and not just be a speed bump in the road?
I mean, I think it comes down to just conversation, honestly. Like, when they call in, you kind of get a feel for them and how, where the conversation's going to go. I guess I want to say there's guys that call in and they're no nonsense. They just want to ask their questions and get off the phone. Other drivers, they're a little bit more open. I always tell them, I'm not going to tell you something just to get you in the door. I'd rather tell you something you don't like and have you not come than tell you something that's a lie and have you get here and be mad because, we gave you a bunch of bull to get you in the door. And now, you're right back where you started while you're leaving the company you're leaving right now. So I think honesty and just being upfront about all the issues is probably the best way to handle it. And that's how you know what type of driver you're getting in the door, because they appreciate that.
Denny, when you were getting hooked up with H&M and starting your driving career there, what was the recruitment process like for you? And how did you kind of know that this was the company that you were going to hook up with and spend what eventually became the rest of your driving career with?
Well, I had become acquainted with a driver named Dave Teague. His sister Tareen also worked at H&M. And Dave had quite the temper. I'd known him for years. Before I ever started trucking, I knew Dave. In fact, we met when I was in radio and we had a promotion. We were helping people in the community with different things. The particular one for this one was there was an elderly lady who didn't have a husband. She was not totally disabled, but she was old and didn't get around real well. And her house needed painting and the HOA was giving her a hard time. So we got contributions like the paint from a paint store, and we had volunteers come out, and in one day we stripped and painted her house.
Wow.
I was there, my son was there, and Dave Teague was there. He was helping. That's how I met him. But back to the trucking thing, he was a trucking gypsy. He'd last a few months, maybe a year, and he'd be ready to bring one of those big bars the police use and knock down the door to the load planners and dispatchers and hurt somebody. He was mad all the time. He couldn't see the beautiful sunrise for all the things that were making him, pissed off every day. Mm-hmm. So when I found out Dave Teague had been with H&M for, I think, about a year, and he was still happy. Like, well, if Dave Teague can be happy there, I certainly can be. So, yeah, it was a short conversation when I made the move. I was with another company before that, and they wouldn't get me home. That was my biggest concern. Getting home was a challenge. My dispatcher it was Martin that I was with before. My dispatcher would say leave on a Friday and have me planned to get home. And then sometime over the weekend, some other dispatcher would go, oh, we got a hot load's got to go to such and such. We got to pull you off this, split that load. And then we've got another one planned for you to get you home. It's no problem. We just had to change some things. Well, guess what? I'd do the load. They had the hot load or whatever that was the problem. And then, oh, man, I'm so sorry that load fell through.
Of course.
This was every time. And, that's what I told the recruiter when I talked to H&M. I said, look, don't lie to me. I feel like if I stay on the road for 4, 5, even 6 weeks at a time, then going home is not a privilege. It's an obligation. I need to go home. I have a wife. I have things I need to take care of home. And if you don't honor that for me, I don't need to come to work for you. And I'll venture to say, I don't believe I maybe one time, and they didn't demand, they asked if I could do this. And I'm like, yeah, okay, I don't have any major things. But every other time they got me home, even to the point of one time they couldn't find a load going to Florida when I still lived in Florida. And they had me drop a trailer at a Pilot truck stop in Georgia and bobtail home, had another driver come pick it up and deliver it because Randy said, you drivers are going to get home. And he stuck by it. In fact, before he totally retired, I think that was one of the last things he did is he would go around and look at everybody's screen every day and make sure those drivers that were supposed to be home were going to get home. And if they weren't, he wanted to know why. So that was my primary. That was the most important thing to me was my home time.
And it stands to
for
reason.
Everybody.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly where I was thinking, Sherry. And how do you I mean, I'm sure that's probably one of the biggest things that you get in your recruitment calls. And does it ever end up being a problem? Like, is there ever somebody that's like, can't get home enough? Or is that something that's pretty much across the board? You guys take care of everybody out there, regardless of what the individual situation is.
I mean, I think that, when they're through the recruitment process, we're pretty open with them. Like, if you're out this long, this is what you can expect to go home, or, kind of go through the weeks and how long they'd be home. I think one thing about us is that, if there's a special circumstance, we're going to get that driver home. I know we had a driver who, he had a dog that had passed away, and the dispatcher said, I'll fly you home when you need to go. The drivers here are friends, they're our family. I've made so many friends since I've been here, and it was way more than what I expected, I guess, coming in. And I think that's part of the charm of the company is that you're not just a truck number. Like, you're a person, you have a name, you have a family, and we try to get to know. You have a dog, we try to get your dog's name and give them treats when they walk in. And I think that's just really important, and that's a good culture.
I think so too. And culture is so important, even when you're not in-house. That's one thing that I think H&M does well. The drivers are included in the culture, even though they're not there all the time to extend that culture to face-to-face. And I feel very privileged that I'm able to host a podcast for such a fantastic company when it comes to taking care of their employees. And I couldn't be more excited to see what the next 50 episodes are going to bring here for this podcast, because we've had so much fun and so much success already. And Sherry, you've been a huge part of that here as of late. When you started working with us, somebody would talk about, hey, communication is big for me. When I go to a company to work, I need communication. Well, let me tell you right now that if you dial up the recruiting department at H&M and you get Sherry on the phone, she's a fantastic communicator. If I could clone you, then the way that you communicate with me, Johnny on the spot, and just wipe it all over everybody that I have to deal with, I would do it hands down. So just thank you so much for everything that you've brought to this podcast, including the great drivers that you recruit and eventually send my way, because they've been awesome too. And you've really sent me some gems there. I've really enjoyed introducing the new drivers and also just getting to call one that's fresh onto the team and say, hey, you want to be on the podcast? It's like, yeah, I can tell you're plugging it, Sherry. I can tell you're talking to him about it.
I mean, maybe a little bit, maybe, a lot. I don't know. I usually go in when they get here and I'm like, hey, just so you know, I'm going to have your name announced on the podcast. You should probably subscribe to that and take a listen and hear what we're all about. And they're all usually pretty receptive to it. So
that's amazing.
Sherry, I have a request.
Okay.
Actually, I don't know if you're the right person to talk to about this, but it's something that I've mentioned a few times, but I don't think it ever got anywhere. It came to fruition, if you will. I know that when y'all pull a driver up on your screen, you have a picture of him, so you know who you're talking to.
Correct.
But
yes.
the drivers don't have that. Is there a way that maybe in the driver's section of the website or something, you could put everybody, all the dispatchers, load planners, everybody in the office, so that we know what you look like too?
Oh, it's scary though. Come on, Denny. No.
Well, no shit. Scary on our end. We're the ugly ones.
Oh, shush. No, not at all. I think I'm working on that, actually. I know recruiting just did some headshots for the landing page. I don't know if they're on there yet, but I think they're kind of working on that, trying to have a page that has like the staff on it. So I'm hoping soon when you pull up H&M Trucking on the webpage, it'll show that.
After 10 plus years, I knew most of the people, but as a baby H&M driver, I'd be talking to somebody and I didn't know who that was. And then I walk in the office and they speak to me because they know who I am, but I'm like, who the hell?
Just slightly awkward there. Just a little bit awkward when you're going, who the heck is this person? Yeah, and I bet
are they important?
Right.
Do I really need to talk to you? I'm busy.
Please tell me that the recruiting department had some recruiting department style fun with their headshots, Sherry, because I know that you guys like to. There was a lot of laughing going on when I was at the terminal coming out of the recruiting department. And when we all went to lunch, I even got dressed down a little bit by Brittany, just putting me in my place, which that was fun. So are those headshots like fun headshots, or are they pretty serious?
I mean, I think they're pretty professional looking is kind of what we went for. I don't know that we did any like crazy funny ones. I know that they did mine, and I had them crop it a little bit because I just, for lack of better wording, felt like my boobs were like swallowing the picture. So
And the drivers don't want to see that.
No. It's my recruiting technique. Don't give my secrets away.
I think we should get you all banana costumes for the next headshots. That's just my first thought. So I would love to see maybe a banana and a pineapple and a mango out of the recruiting department, because you guys have the great personalities for it. So.
Do you remember the bananas in pajamas, like cartoon?
Absolutely. Unfortunately, I do. I'm going to have that song stuck in my head for the rest of the week.
You're welcome.
Well, Sherry, before we let you go here, is there anything that you want to say to anybody, any of your drivers, any other staff or family and friends that might be listening?
I just want to say how much I appreciate everybody. The drivers out there, you guys work so hard, and, it doesn't go without notice. We do care about you. We care about your families, and, know if you ever need anything, you can reach out and give us a call. But we do appreciate all you do for us.
And we appreciate all that you do for us here on the podcast. That's Sherry Vogler from the recruiting department at H&M Trucking. Sherry, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, Marcus. Thanks, Denny.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Next up here on the H&M Trucking Podcast, helping us celebrate our 50th episode anniversary, is Dale Cook from H&M Trucking. Dale, thank you so much for being here, my friend.
Glad to be here.
When we sat down the very first time, Dale, when I went to H&M, met all you guys and started talking about the podcast, we sat down and had a really good conversation about it. And I couldn't tell then if it was something that everybody was really bought into, but you definitely made me feel like it was something that you were interested in and that you were willing to give it a try. Here we are 50 episodes in. What do you think that the podcast has brought to H&M? What kind of stuff do you hear about it there in the office? What's the hubbub, if you will?
Well, I think the main thing it brings is education. Everybody gets a chance to hear different perspectives, whether that be from the driver, from someone in safety, from someone in accounting, from someone in HR, and that brings perspective to what we do as a group. I suppose there's some teamwork involved in this too, that, if we can all kind of work together, makes everybody's job a little bit smoother. So.
Well, the education part has been great because I obviously don't have the experience, but bringing in Denny Stone here has been massive for me. I feel twice as educated as I was before he ever came, and I learn something every single day. So I really can relate to that because I learned so much just talking to him and just hearing him talk to the other drivers and everything. And Denny, you are huge for the education part of this podcast, and I really appreciate it, man. It's been a lot of fun having you, and I really look forward to what we can do in the next 50 episodes now that you're here.
Wow, you build me up so much. How can I keep up with this, right? But thank you. Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and I'm glad to add that perspective. But, I hope to bring in other drivers to get those other perspectives as well, because I'm just one guy.
Well, you do a great job. And Dale, having your guys' support there has been huge for the podcast. And I wonder, what kind of feedback do you get around the office from the drivers? Do you ever have any of them pop in and just say, hey, I was listening and I enjoyed it, or anything like that?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. And the other thing that we hear from them, it's one of those emotions that sometimes I don't think people think enough about. And that's empathy. That creates empathy for what goes on in the office when they hear our struggles or our problems, and vice versa. It creates empathy, for us, for them, when we understand that, drivers feel like they're not listened to or they don't have a say. And those are important things. It's, I've talked about, we hate truck numbers at H&M. We like people. And so I think empathy is another big learning curve for us that's really helped, camaraderie between drivers and dispatchers and, the rest of the folks in the office.
Denny, talk to me a little bit about when you worked at H&M, that truck number versus person thing. How did that relate to you? How did you feel? Because I know that's what H&M really strives for. And talking to somebody directly, I've had other drivers that are currently driving there say that to me. And I wonder how you felt when you were during your career with H&M about the driver versus truck number thing.
Oh, absolutely. And this is except for a small company I worked for years ago that only had 7 trucks. Every other company, I was a number, but H&M, I'm not. I'm a person. I'm Denny Stone. I have a truck number, and occasionally somebody's filling in that's not familiar with me, and I have to remind them what my truck number is. But that was rare, very rare. Most of the time, they knew who I was. In fact, Stacy, it didn't take her long to learn that, tell me where to be and when. And then she forgot about me. If I had to call in, I have to, hey, remind me what you're doing. She would. And to me, that's a vote of confidence in my abilities, because she could forget about me and put it out of her mind and deal with something else. But yeah, the personal connection, that meant the world to me. So that was very important.
Eve sent me an article just last night, actually, and I was reading over it. It was from one of the various news sites that covers the trucking industry, and what they were covering was that a bunch of trucking companies are starting to dive into podcasts. Now, I feel like with H&M, we got to this party long before some of these other companies did. So they definitely forgot to mention us, which, I'm pretty proud of getting through 50 episodes. So I might write a tersely worded email about that or something. But a lot of the executives from these other companies are the ones that are running their podcasts. And I wonder, Dale, if we'd have come to you that day and said, listen, we're going to put a microphone in front of you and we need a couple hours out of you every single week. How would that have been as an idea for you, Dale?
Oh, I don't know if I'd have jumped into that too quickly. There's a lot of bullets flying around here, and we keep a lot of balls in the air. So, yeah, I don't think I'd have been able to commit to 2 hours a week. And it's not the 2 hours of the microphone in front of you. It's the preparation that goes into that, Marcus. We appreciate all that you do there, because without you, narrating, so to speak, for the rest of us, we'd just be a bunch of guys standing around a room talking. But yeah, I think if you'd have come to me then, the podcast itself, it's just a connection. It gives all those drivers that are out there, rolling along on the road, a chance to listen every week. And that fills 2 hours of that lonely day, right, Denny? At least something that the guys can attach to and relate to. So I think it's been a wonderful success for a company. So, yeah. And again, I would have never thought of a podcast myself. What is it Mr. Mueller always used to say about me, our owner, previous owner, so to speak, now, as Randy's pretty much in retirement, but he'd say, Dale, you're not very creative, but you're devious as hell. So we could figure things out, right, Denny?
Devious.
So,
well,
devious. I like.
Yeah. I'm not creative, but I'm devious as hell. So
I like it.
Anyway, no, it's been a wonderful, I listen to the broadcasts, those podcasts regularly, trying to hear what the drivers are saying. And so it's educational for us too, if we take the time and to, put that on our phone, Bluetooth it to your car and driving along. It's kind of enjoyable. I listen to it in segments sometimes, I get part of it and then you get home. Yeah, it's always interesting. I appreciate the time you've been putting into it, Marcus.
Well, thank you, Dale. I can't tell you how much that means to me. And every time we've had you on here, you've done a fantastic job. You always give a good interview. You always say, give us more details rather than less. And it's something that I've cherished. And also the way that you communicate with me. I want to give a little bit of some accolades back to you. You are Johnny on the spot with your communication, and I've never had to struggle to schedule you, even as today went along, where my internet has been in and out all day, and I've been frantically trying to figure out a fix. You've been super easy to communicate with, and I just appreciate you and everybody else there in the office is willing to come on here and be honest with us and be truthful with us. And, if we can create some empathy through this thing, if we can help connect the dots a little bit and the drivers feel better informed and better prepared to be out there to do their job, that's all in a day's work for Denny and I now. And it feels pretty good that we got to this party, like I said, earlier than what a lot of these companies did, because I think this is a fantastic tool. I never saw as a broadcaster when I first started out on terrestrial radio, I never thought that this is where it would take me. And I can't tell you how happy I am to be here, especially working with all the great people at H&M Trucking. It's been a fantastic journey, and I'm ready for 50 more episodes. Actually, James said 51 more episodes. So if we can get to 101, we can have another conversation about it and make sure that James is still all about it,
You bet. So,
well, I hope that we can make it more fun for you than a root canal, Dale. I really do.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to that tomorrow. That was part of our scheduling issue there, Denny. I got a bad tooth. I must be getting old. I've never had a bad tooth before, but I got one now. So.
Well, I went many years without any, and then it went downhill quick. So fingers crossed.
Don't say that.
It's only
Don't
the one.
say that.
And Dale,
right.
I've got to ask you real quick before I let you go. Where's vacation? Where are you headed? Someplace warm, I hope.
We are Bolivar, Texas, right just east, across on the ferry ride from Galveston. So taking 9 people and a dog. So we'll have a good time with my family. So.
That is awesome. Well, you're not going to be too far from Denny, so he'll wave if he drives by down there anytime in the next couple of weeks. Hope you enjoy yourself.
Will do. Appreciate it.
Dale Cook from
fun,
H&M.
Dale.
Thanks, Dale.
Yep. All right. Take care, guys.
Bye-bye.
And now, H&M President James Fonda.
We've given him quite the break here on the H&M Trucking Podcast, but if we're going to celebrate 50 episodes, we're going to do it right. And that means we are going to bring in the man himself, president of H&M Trucking, James Fonda. James, welcome back to the podcast, man. It's been a little bit.
It has been a little bit.
Have you missed me? Well, have you missed me?
I always miss you, Marcus. What are you talking about?
He's kind of needy, isn't he?
And Marcus
Have you
definitely
missed me?
Yep. Yeah, I am the needy type. The one time I know James didn't miss me was in the first round of the NFL playoffs there when his Packers came to San Francisco and got surprised. I know that I was not missed for at least a couple weeks. And then I know that James had a little smirk on his face when the Chiefs beat my 49ers as well. So, I got what was coming to me.
Well, I can relate to that because I'm a Cowboy fan.
We're all in misery together.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, James, I just wanted to bring you on and talk about this thing a little bit, man. I mean, it's kind of crazy. We've had 50 episodes of this iteration of the podcast, not to mention the 18 episodes that we did before we really turned this thing into the H&M Trucking Podcast. And I want to ask you from your perspective, what you think the podcast, if anything, has brought to the company.
I think it's actually been a lot more well received than I would have guessed early on. Now if drivers asking who do they have to talk to. And I said, this annoying guy Marcus with a beard. Let me give you a cell phone. It does allow. I think allows guys, and Denny probably through that. Maybe allows guys, the drivers on the road, to have a little bit more connection with the internal staff and hear from them directly, whether that's even if it's just their voice or whether it's information or good or bad. So, I think it's good. There's nothing wrong with over communication to the drivers, right?
I mean, I'll default to Denny on that. Denny, when you were driving for H&M, do you think this podcast would have been something you would have tuned into on a weekly basis?
Oh, yeah. You get bored driving on the road. We could listen to you for a little while.
For a little while. You find that caveat in there.
Yeah.
Now I got my smart
40 minutes of Marcus is probably...
Hey, man, imagine how my wife feels. Like, because I don't shut this off. This is just me. I kind of, wear the emotions on the sleeve and the personality as well. So just be glad it's capped at, 40 minutes to an hour a week for everyone else. She's the one that bit the bullet and has to live with me for the rest of her life, or until she finds a good lawyer, one of the two.
Hey, before we run out of time here, I have a question. I see these pictures. I've seen them for years, I guess ever since, James came on board at H&M, and he goes off on these adventures like mountain climbing and stuff. But I never hear the stories behind any of this. Are you willing to share one of those? Because, I mean, those are adventures of a lifetime for most of us, and you've lived them.
Yeah, well, I was just joking with somebody before. I said, man, I remember when I go ice climbing, mountain climbing, hiking, skiing, snowboarding, and now, like, got kids at home and try to run this company and a company in JSL and Bulldog. And I'm like, man, I gave up all my good hobbies. I'm like, maybe those were the good days, and I didn't realize how good I had it. I've always been an outdoor guy, so I've always said if I could pick one place to retire, it'd be somewhere down in backwoods country near a mountain. So now maybe it's up northern Cody, Wyoming, or something like that. But I've always enjoyed. I like cold weather. Love cold weather. Even though I am of Lebanese descent or Middle Eastern descent, and I have darker skin. I actually prefer negative temps. Yeah, I love cold weather.
So it must have been a really good time when you went ice climbing here. It's probably been about a year ago. This time you guys went out on a little ice climbing adventure.
Yeah, I was supposed to go last month, but work's just been too much, so I canceled that. But yeah, if you actually remember, I took my shirt off when I hiked up there.
That's right. I do remember.
Yeah. I love the cold.
What's the adrenaline like on an ice climbing adventure? I mean, I've been out in some inclement weather, mostly just hunting, and never having to climb an ice face or a waterfall or anything like that. I once referred to it as being stuck to the side of a mountain, and the guy that you went ice climbing with, Grant, he told me exactly, I'm stuck to the side of the mountain. I don't get that feeling. I feel like there's still a lot of dangers surrounding this sport. So talk to me about that a little bit. How nervous are you when you are stuck to a waterfall some 50, 100 feet up in the air?
The nerves kind of go away. You become very focused and present with the situation that you're in. You don't really have that nerve-wracking feeling. Maybe like when you first descend, you're like, okay, you have to kind of mentally gear up to go, but it goes away pretty quick because you kind of get locked into what you're doing, and it's exhausting. So you really don't have time to think about whatever. It makes your mind pretty clear. So it's kind of relaxing in a way.
I can relate to that. That's like when I was a Marine and then I was a firefighter and an EMT. You're training and you just focus, and then you look back on what you did. So yeah, I can kind of relate to that. But yeah, I could slip on a sidewalk. I can't imagine climbing a frozen waterfall.
It's definitely different. But yeah, it really is. It really actually does kind of you get to these places, you don't have cell phone coverages, you don't have, you're kind of just really disconnected. And that's the only way I can be disconnected from work is if you literally, I can't see what's going on. So, now you're afraid of heights, I advise you not to go down this path. But I hope always, I think the reason I got it, I enjoy like hiking or now climbing with Grant, but the, snowboarding I've done my entire life pretty much. And, once you've done double blacks and double black extremes, you've pretty much done it all. You're like, okay, like a steep descent is a steep descent. Can I get bored? So what do you do? Okay, I'll ascend. I'll climb something. It's a little bit different. A little bit different version of a challenge.
Man, I can't imagine. I fell down a black diamond once by accident when I was trying to take a blue square or whatever it is, and a blue dot, I think. And yeah, just kind of tumbled off the side of the hill and rolled all the way to the bottom, got yelled at by some ski patrol guys. That's my black diamond experience. So you can imagine why I stick to the bunny hill.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I'll be in the hot tub when y'all get through, okay?
I always made a rule when we go on our ski trips. Wherever we stayed, I had to have a hot tub.
Yeah.
So that was a mission critical. And as get back to where you could sit and relax.
Well, and as you push 40 too, James, that becomes a necessity more than just something that you want.
I'm still 35.
Talking about old again.
I'm 35.
Thanks, Marcus.
I'm not near 40 yet. I'm 35. Thank you very much.
Okay,
I got some years still.
But
I think it probably sends people through a little bit of a little head tilt when not every day you see like two guys, Grant and I, that want to go ice climbing or go do these other sports. So like, oh, you do things that are more than just go golf. Like, yeah, I really don't go. I can play golf. I'm a good athlete, but golf's not really my thing.
Well,
leave that for Dale.
I'm sorry.
I'll let Dale have that.
I would love to get you both out there, get a couple of cocktails in you, and then just really get to know, what's behind the curtain there, James. In fact, that sounds like a great podcast. You, me, and Dale, one golf cart. I'll sit between you, and we'll just go ahead and slam a microphone on the front of that thing, and that sounds like a hell of a day to me.
Dale gets pretty hyper focused on his game.
Well.
I think I'd probably find a little bit too many vodka beverages.
Well, and Denny, to touch on something you just mentioned, I am going to have to apologize to you probably frequently in the coming months because just this last weekend, I went down to Palm Springs and surprised one of my best friends on his 40th birthday. And it was nothing but a weekend of all of that guy's best friends just absolutely assaulting him with over-the-hill jokes and you're getting old and everything like that. And now I know that come September, that's me. They're all going to show up at my house, and that's going to be my turn. So just know that that's where the whole age conversation has been coming from, is just my recent experience and the fact that I'm a little terrified of turning the big 4-0.
Well, okay. 30 kicked my butt because I grew up in that generation where you don't trust anybody over 30, and plus Vietnam was going on. So you didn't know if you were going to make it to 30. So once I got past 30, 40 was no big deal.
Yeah, all I had to worry about was the financial crash of 2008, and when I was 30, I didn't have enough money to worry about it then anyway. So 30 was a breeze, man. I felt 20 until I turned 39, and now I feel like I'm 65. So, but James, you got 5 good years left before 40. That's good to know, man. I say make the most of them.
Actually, I joked. I said that ice climbing is like the old man sport. So I should be able to do this till I'm like 55.
So 60. What's the young man's sport? Is that snowboarding?
Probably.
Yeah.
I'm guessing you're the type that would jump out of a helicopter on top of a mountain and ski all the way down or something, right?
It's on my checklist, my to-do list to do that. So just haven't. My 30th birthday, I always wanted to go down to Patagonia and do that. And for like 10 years, I was 20. I was like, I'm going to do it when I turn 30. That's going to be my 30th birthday. Then I ended up getting married and then Leslie and I got pregnant with Stuart, and so that abruptly changed that plan, and then here we are. Since haven't done it.
Well, I'm pulling for you. Obviously,
one of these days I'll get back up there and do it.
Patagonia, man, it's such a beautiful country up there, and it's one thing that I'm sure you take plenty of time to do because you're talking about how it kind of clears your mind to be up doing that type of stuff. As I've gotten a little bit into my 30s and 40s here soon, I've noticed when I'm outdoors like that, if I'm hunting or anything like that, I'm taking extra time to just appreciate where I am. I never used to do that as a young kid. I never used to just stop and look around. And I really enjoy that. That's part of that whole freedom thing. When I've walked up to the top of a mountain and I'm standing on it glassing for elk, I'll put the binoculars down and just stand there and breathe it in for a few. And you've gotten to see some beautiful locations, I'm sure, when you're out there climbing ice.
Yeah, I keep all of it. Yeah, skiing, snowboarding, that's the best part of it. You go on those back hills and where no one's around. Sometimes, yeah, it's just serene. Sometimes you get stuck and you're like, I got to get out of this somehow. But
yeah, that time I fell into a tree well. I didn't appreciate the scenery much, but
trying to get out of those are pretty rough. Yeah.
Of course, I wasn't on a mountain full of ice, but East Tennessee not long ago, I was hiking with Gilly down to Conestoga Falls, and we took a spill. I had both hands free. I had his leash clipped to my belt loop. Well, I took a fall off the side of the trail. I slipped on a wet spot, and this thing was almost 90 degrees. It was probably every bit of 85 degrees down. I managed to grab a tree on the way down, and Gilly's at the very end of his leash. They're at the edge going, "Don't go any further, Dad." I managed to get back up on the trail, but boy, that was scary because below us was about 50 more feet of air and then rocks on the river.
Oh, wow.
So
how's Gilly doing these days?
Oh, he's doing great, man. He's enjoying retirement just like I am, laying around the house, not having to go anywhere.
Man, I bet he's living his life now.
I think he misses it. He does. When I pack up to go to see Dad, I have to go check on Dad every month or month and a half. And when he sees my bag next to the door, he's looking at me like, "We going back out? We going on the truck?" He's getting all happy. I'm like, "No, sorry, bud. Just going to the old folks' home."
We're going to get him his own segment on the podcast. He's guested a few times. I know he's back there from time to time. So we're going to have to interview him because, you told me, Denny, that he was the star of the show. People didn't want to see you when you came into the terminal as much as they wanted to see him.
That's a fact.
Well, James, I got to say, since I have you here, I want to say thank you because you've given us the opportunity to do this podcast for H&M. And I know that there's been some bumps in the road, but it has been a very enjoyable time. And I've learned so much about the industry, and not only about the industry, but about what it takes to run a company of such high quality like H&M. The drivers like it. They like working there. Not everything's perfect, and that's what they'll tell me. And that's kind of what I love about this podcast. We can be honest about it. Nobody has to worry that their job is in jeopardy if they come on here and say, "Hey, I want an explanation for this," or "I want to figure out why this is the way that it is." And you guys have been very gracious with your time as well, coming on and addressing those things. They're not always the easiest conversations, but we have them here. And I just think that, having you be available for certain interviews like this has been invaluable to this podcast. I think it's important for people to hear from the guy in charge. And, you say you get separated from this when you get out on the mountain, you get to clear your head. I've been training my carrier pigeons. I'll be able to get to you sooner or later, regardless of if you have a cell phone. So
I've canceled all the trips. I got to figure out a way how I can do that again.
I'll shoot his pigeons. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Hey, 50 episodes it's kind of like that. You're looking at that mountain, Marcus. You're at the top. You're at like one of the break points. You're looking back. I'm like, oh, cool. Like, look how far you come.
Right.
I think that it's not. It gives culture, gives depth to the company. Like I said, like Denny, he said he probably wouldn't mind listening to it back in the day. What else you're gonna do? You get how many hours you're driving today, and you can spend 45 minutes of it to listen to some people. That's not so bad.
I guess not.
It's a good way to get information out there. If it was just a safety meeting kind of thing, I don't know if I'd want to listen, but it is fun. There's a fun element in there, but it's informative as well. So yeah, I think Marcus has done a good job from what I've been able to see.
You guys are going to make me
when I go on a little road trip, that's usually, I don't listen to week to week, but when I'll go on a road trip somewhere, that's when I knock them out. Especially because if I go down to Kansas City, I can listen to like 2.5 down, 2.5, and then 2.5 back up. Knock out 5 episodes.
And what's Mrs. Fonda think of him? Does she get a little bit tired of me, like I would expect?
She's in the car. She did pass out when I turned it on. So
I'm good for that too. just hopefully some of your drivers.
I think that's actually when I turn it on, is when they're all asleep.
Okay, good. Well, hopefully I don't have the same effect on the drivers. Let's just keep our fingers crossed for that. All right.
Hey, Stuart has now figured out. He's like, "Hey, that's you, Dad," or "Hey, that's H&M." Like, so
awesome.
Something to it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, James, before we let you go, I know you're a busy guy. I want to give you a chance to say anything that you want to say to any of the staff that might be listening, family, friends. The floor is yours.
Hope you're all well, staying safe. Hope they'll have a good 2024. That's all I got.
We were looking for congratulations on 50 episodes, actually, is what I was.
Whatever. You know what?
He does again.
Let's do it again. Here, I know you can edit that out. You know what? We've done 50 great episodes. I look forward to another 50 great episodes, and we'll see if we make it to 101.
Well said and genuine. Well said and genuine, James. Thank you so much for being here today, my friend. We'll get you back on soon, okay?
See you, James.
All right, later.
H&M Trucking, that's going to do it for episode 50. Yeah, you knew I was going to play it. For episode 50 of the H&M Trucking Podcast, thank you all so much for being here, taking part, talking to us, bringing your stories, bringing any suggestions that you have. This podcast is great because you, The drivers and the staff at H&M Trucking make it great. And again, from the bottom of my heart and speaking for my entire podcast team, we really appreciate all the help that we get from everybody there at H&M, and always looking forward to 50 more episodes. Although I will say, I get so busy around here now that I kind of start to feel like Ari Gold a little bit.
I need a fucking assistant!
But so far, they have not hired me an assistant, and to be honest with you, I just pray for that person if they ever do come around, because I don't think that I will be easy to be an assistant for. But we're going to keep cranking out podcast episodes. We're having a ton of fun doing it, and we're always willing to talk about whatever it is that you want to talk about. So don't forget, if you're out there listening right now and you're like, hey, I really wish they would talk about this thing, get in touch with your dispatcher, get in touch with your driver manager, get in touch with Eve or Sherry Vogler. They will get in touch with me, and we will make sure and make it happen, H&M. All right, I got to wrap up this one, but just because I brought it up earlier, I'm going to just do one more of these for James Fonda. Always appreciate his time here on the podcast for the last 50 episodes, and for the next 50 episodes, one thing's going to be the same. Stay fresh, cheese bags. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the H&M Trucking Podcast. Please leave a review, subscribe, and connect with Marcus over at the H&M Trucking social media channels. And if you're considering a job at H&M, find us at hmtrucking.com. Until next time, stay safe and ahead of the curve drivers.